Been watching ball with my big old brain and think the tape needs some explaining. Studying the stats to understand it. Hey, yo. Talk data to me.
What is up, y'all? It is Talk Data to Me, episode 22. Episode 22. I honestly can't believe it, but I have a very special guest with me here today, a true sicko. Guys, if you don't know who Davis Mattek is, this man is already out here grinding drafts. Yes, the NFL Super Bowl has not been played yet, but I'll be curious. That's my first question to you, actually, Davis, is how many drafts have you already done? Now, I know we're talking best ball, but how many do you already have under your belt?
I think I've done like 15 already. Dwayne, I'll tell you, my goal for this season, it's a new year, new resolution, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. I'm trying to draft the most best ball teams of anyone in the contiguous United States of America this year. I would like to have like 3,000 teams. I want to have the most shots on goal of anybody.
Do you know who the market leader is? Is it Eagles? I think he did like 2,500 drafts last year in best ball.
I mean, I did a lot last year. I honestly would have a hard time coming up with a real number. I'm going to keep a sheet this year. I would assume Sacrilegious, our buddy from Legendary Upside, maybe was close. Shady Advice does a ton. I mean, Karain does a ton. I would assume 3,000 is around the market leader. So that's my assumption.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing with best ball is you don't have to manage them. I've put a new rule on myself that is 25 managed leagues. I've had years where I've done 50, and man, the waiver wire just eventually like subdues me. And I'm just like, as much as I love football, it's my favorite thing in the world. I love fantasy football, all forms, my favorite thing on the planet, besides my wife and kids. You guys might listen to this, so I got to put you guys in front of that. But man, I love it. But the thing I do love with best ball is not having to manage all these teams. So we've got Davis here. He's already got 15 drafts under his belt. And so we're going to focus on a few things for you guys here. Obviously, we're going to talk about potential draft strategies, the way things look now. A lot still to come, guys. We get that. We've got free agency. We've got the NFL draft. Things are going to get shaken up. We still don't even have all of the head coaching and offensive coordinator positions filled. We do have some of those. So we'll talk about some of those things as we go. But the real idea here is, early drafts, that Davis has done. Like, this is a cool like market edge that we used to not have. Like, we really know where the market sets on a lot of these players, a lot of these teams, and we get to watch in real time how the market reacts as we get new news.
100%. I mean, the number one thing that is leaping out to me already is the market is like fully back in on running backs, like fully back in, like it is 2018 all over again. Like, there are more running backs than wide receivers in the first round of drafts. There are more running backs than wide receivers in the second round. You've got older running backs, Jacobs, McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, guys who were just bad last year, Barkley, like guys coming off the worst seasons of their career, still getting drafted quite high. And then you also have the secondary pressure of some of the young guys who did not perform well last season and were outperformed by veterans on their team. RJ Harvey, Trevion Henderson, Bishal Tootin. These guys are all like, Tootin is much more expensive than he was last year. And Henderson and Harvey are about as expensive as they were last year, despite I think you'd be lying to say either of them failed, but neither of them Henderson had the 3 insane games, but
without Stevenson.
But without Stevenson, right? And those guys are still expensive. So you just have all this upward pressure on running back prices, and no one is popping that balloon yet.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I did a show last week with Matthew Friedman. We talked about league trends, and that was kind of one of the things we're seeing. Number one, like passing yards per game are down, guys, the lowest since 2006 last year. Right around 207 passing yards per game. So NFL defenses, they have evolved. Like, since the Sean McVay explosion of 11 personnel, they've started rebuilding their defenses, lighter, faster, designed, better nickel corners, designed to really cover these 3 wide receiver sets. And really the the flip side to that has been like, we're getting more running plays, less passing plays. You're getting less plays overall because when you run the ball, the clock keeps moving. And then we've got the kickoff rule change over the last 2 years. So touchdowns, even though passing yards are down, like passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns were both up over the last 2 years. So that makes sense. And in the data that we looked at, like the top 12 running backs, the guys that are getting the majority of the carries, and obviously the guys that are the elite pass catchers, they're the ones we still want the most, but those guys are all up, right, in fantasy points per game. And wide receivers on the other side, like, are across the board down. Now, your elite wide receivers are still great, and a lot of those players, they're getting schemed up in really great ways, like Puka, JSN, plus they're awesome players on their own. But the traditional, like, outside X wide receiver, Davis, like, it's just not the same way it used to be. And so these wide receiver 2s and 3s are down, and then the tight ends are up, because teams are using more 12 personnel. They're using more 13 personnel. So that means less time you're using. Like Luther Burden actually fell victim to this, even once he kind of mini broke out late in the year, because the Bears still wanted to use their 2 tight end sets. So he was officially their wide receiver 3. He overcame Olamide Zaccheaus and took the role, but his role was inconsistent from week to week because of tight ends and these different things that teams running the ball more.
100%. I mean, that is... like we just have this overall structural issue in the NFL that I think a lot of people thought there was a chance it would get solved this season. We're like, okay, the too high safety. Honestly, kind of what ended up happening was the cover 2 to some degree actually didn't end up being the limited factor. It was just that a lot of quarterbacks were unwilling to take chances against like quarters coverage and stuff. So the defensive meta shifted a little bit. It's not the same thing that was limiting the NFL last year. But overall, defensive personnel has gotten smaller linebackers, more nickel. I mean, nickel is base now, so it's just more effective to run the ball. It's straight up like it's like the most effective it's been to run the ball, and 2 tight ends were a natural way to combat the smaller defensive personnel.
Yeah, and it takes time, for these offensive coordinators and head coaches like McVay to implement their plan, because like you have to then work with your GM and say, okay, this is what NFL defenses are doing. And regardless whether it's too high or quarters, the big thing is defenses want to limit big plays. That's what they're trying to take away in the passing game. And they're really succeeding in doing that. And so they're like, okay, well, it probably means we need to beef up our tight end. So it doesn't happen overnight, but you're seeing the influx of these younger tight ends. We had Harold Fannin, Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren, and that's just last year. Like we can go back to the years before that with Brock Bowers, the year before that, or 2 years before that, might have been one year before that, Trey McBride. So like we're getting the younger talents coming in, but still the talent has to cooperate. It's not like every year you get to have like a class like we did last year. But it is interesting because now we are seeing in the Rams, like they doubled up. They did Colby Parkinson, of all people, in free agency. Plus they had Terrence Ferguson in the draft. So it takes time, like for these plans to actually take place. But despite all that, Davis, it didn't matter. Passing yards per game, we're still down. Now they are figuring out how to play these defenses in the red zone. Like the passing touchdowns are back up. Part of that is due to field position being the highest it's been back to 2005 due to the kickoff rule changes. But it is interesting because at the end of the day, like we love football. And you do have to pay attention to what's going on, like at the NFL level, at the macro. And then you have to start to like dwindle that down to, okay, what does that mean at these positional levels in order to start to try to find edges, in this game? So real quick, guys, before we jump into more of that, this is best ball. So if you guys haven't played over on Underdog, I invite you to go do so. We're going to be talking about the big board draft. So these are $10 entries. You can enter 150 teams, 223,000 contestants. So these are big tournaments, guys. But the best thing that I can say here is like when we look at it to date, we have 1,300 drafts completed or that are in progress. So like we've got a pretty good amount of data as we're going to start to talk through some of Davis's takes on players and positions and how you can attack the draft. But just remember, as we're talking, some little nuances for those of you that don't play best ball. Like, for example, quarterback 2s, and Davis, you can jump in here with anything. QB 2s move up because everyone is typically 99% of teams are going to draft 2 because you draft and you're done, guys. So if you don't take a quarterback 2, it's not like you can pick one up off the waiver wire.
Most people try and get 3 now. That's another meta from last season. So quarterback prices have been, again, a little bit more upward pressure there because a lot of people try and get 3.
Yeah, and tight ends the same way, 2 to 3 on most teams. I know a couple of years ago, like the meta was 3. I haven't seen what people are saying, necessarily about that. But the main takeaway being is that, at your onesie positions, you do have to draft 2. So you're going to see some of that represented in some of the data that we share for you guys with you guys. And then the other thing, like for best ball players, you can jump in here, Davis, like correlation is like so huge. And I can honestly argue that really like any fantasy team that you're building, like you should be thinking about correlation. And when we say correlation, it's like you may be making certain bets on teams. But if you're drafting one fantasy team, you may feel differently about that than if you're going to be like Davis and draft 3,000. So he's going to have certain teams that may be heavy on 4 or 5 teams, like on his overall team. And it's going to have other people sprinkled through. But when we say correlation, it can also mean like who are the teams you're going to be playing against. Even though we don't know the NFL schedule, we know essentially the teams that these teams will be playing because we know their division, we know their conference that rotates on a 3-year basis. We know your out of conference schedule, right? You play a different division every 4 years. So a lot of these things we understand. People don't know who these teams are going to play in week 17, which is huge, guys, because in a best ball contest, basically you make it through all these cuts. And in the final week, you're playing against like another 500 to 600 teams, almost like a small DFS contest. And so you will see stacking at the end of these drafts where it's like, oh, I've got the quarterback, running back, and receiver for this team. So as a tiebreaker on my last 2 picks, I'm going to take players from the team they play in week 17. So any other things that you would add that like someone that's not playing a lot of best ball, that would be something that's a little bit different as we talk about this data?
I mean, I think one of the things that you run up to is just the idea of like filling out the starting lineup. And like, it's certainly okay in best ball to be like, all right, well, I drafted my 6th wide receiver in the 7th round, or I drafted my 4th running back in the 5th round, even though like that is not a classic starting position. And then I think like the most helpful way to think about best ball roster construction is if you think about every round as like an auction dollar. So if you have, 87% of your auction dollars spent at running back, you should
Yeah.
probably then draft extra buck wide receivers. Like, oh, okay, I spent all my draft capital. I spent, $67 in my draft capital at running back. Well, I should probably take 8 wide receivers or 9 wide receivers. Or I took Josh Allen, so I spent a huge chunk there. Maybe I only need 2 quarterbacks on this one or something like that. Obviously, it doesn't always apply, and there are reasons to do like weird roster construction strategies in best ball. But I do think that is a good rule of thumb to start with.
Yeah, no, and I think that's actually really applicable like across all formats. And so essentially, guys, the more draft capital you spend, so your earlier picks at positions, like you should spend less on them later. So if you say you're in a league where you play 2 running backs, 1 flex, and 2 wide receivers, and you take 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, like you're going to need more shots fired at your wide receivers, right? Because the elite ones are going to be gone. You're not getting Puka Nacua. You're not getting Jackson Smith and Jigba. You're not getting Jamar Chase. Like you pass those guys to take a running back in round 1, and then you did the same thing in round 2. So you will typically need to just spend, more draft capital later in the draft on those positions to basically try to give yourself a chance, because maybe you've got 1 or 2 you really still feel good about in rounds 3 or 4. But you know that those are not going to be as surefire typically, right? We always get surprises as what you would have gotten in rounds 1 or 2. So I think that that's an absolute, great call out. So you're 15 drafts in. Tell us a little bit, about early on, like, how do you think, one, about these large field type tournaments? And then if you're thinking about certain, like overall, like, are you more of a drafter that like on something like this, you're going to diversify across the board? Or are you more of a, you still really have your strong player takes, your stands, like guys you want to be going after, guys you want to be fading, that sort of thing?
I've done it both ways. 2024, I just kind of like went all in on a lot of my takes. Sadly, in 2024, none of my takes were Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, so I didn't make very much money. Last year, I built a way more balanced portfolio, which saved me from some huge misses on guys I really liked. Matthew Golden, some of these other huge busts, detracted from some of the huge hits in the portfolio. It's just, it's kind of the nature of the business. You're just never going to get everything right 100% of the time. And then there's also the limiting factor in best ball, and this is not true as much in managed leagues, although it does still matter if you're playing in managed leagues. Like what if the guys you needed, the best guys in weeks 1 through 14 were not the guys that you needed in week 50? Kyle Pitts is the best example from
Right.
last year. Not that Pitts was bad. Pitts was fine, but Pitts had like the
Yeah.
fourth highest tight end scoring game of all time in week 15, then had another really good game in
Which
week
is the
16.
first round of the best ball playoffs,
Correct.
guys. And you're in a
Yes.
pod with another 10 to 12 teams, and depending on the format you're playing in, you may need to finish first out of those 12 or in the top 2 to be able to advance. Well, if you get put into a pod where 4 other people had Kyle Pitts on your team, you're cooked. Like immediately.
over.
Like you're just
Yeah.
it was already over after Thursday night. It was so deflating.
And the same thing happened in week 16 with Puka. Puka had 47 points on the Thursday night game, or the Saturday night game, I think, in week 16. So, it doesn't matter. You could have drafted 1,000,000,000%. Javonte Williams is a really good example of this last year. He was this awesome, huge league-winning pick, scored a bunch of points in the regular season. He was like really cheap. You could have advanced a ton of your teams, but I don't think he cracked double digits in the best ball
Playoffs.
postseason.
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, which then leads you to really zoom out and say, well, what am I trying to optimize for? Am I trying to optimize for getting as many teams as possible into week 15? Or am I trying to optimize for a more diverse portfolio so the teams that I do get there don't all have the same needed outcome? Like, I don't know, would you rather advance 100 teams with Wan'Dale Robinson or 67 teams, but you have a different wide receiver you took in that round on all of them? It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, it is hard to say, because obviously you could have a lot of Wan'Dale variations in some of those teams, even though he may have enough other bullets to keep going, but at the same time, like the diversification is key. I think the other really interesting thing, to kind of stay on this question and what you're saying and how you talked about the way you approach 2024 as well as 2025. Number one, I've also done the same thing in the past. Like I've had years where I've been more diversified. I've had years where I've been more in on my player takes. And honestly, it kind of evolves every year, guys, because sometimes the players I love, everyone's already on them anyway. So it's like, you're not going to be able to get them in all the drafts. And there's other years where there are players falling past where I think they should go. And I may be a little heavier on those players. But as a general rule, I do make a little bit more of my player stands, probably I would say from round 7 to 12, where it doesn't completely destroy me as much. Last year, I made a big stand on JSN in round 3, which worked, but I didn't get enough Jonathan Taylor in round 2, which, hurt me. So it's it can cut both ways. But I think a big thing here, Davis, and give me your thoughts on this, is as much as we may research this, and we're obviously grinding this stuff all the time. This is a show called Talk Data to me. I mean, I'm grinding all of this stuff. We've got multiple people on our team, and we do think that the numbers really matter, and we're trying to predict things, but there's so much variance. Variance is a real thing in fantasy sports, period. And I do think it's more prevalent in some than others. And I think football is one of the most high variance, because there's so many dependencies, for a team. Your offensive line, if you're a quarterback, your offensive line needs to be good. Do you have the weapons? Do you have a coordinator that's actually, trying to do the things that work against, NFL defenses today? Or you have someone that's stuck in 2019? All of those are factors. Plus, just is the quarterback good? And you can do this for every single position. And some positions I think have more variance than others. But embracing variance. And I think if you're going to diversify, and it comes back to tiering players, right? And that's why we do tiers. It's because we're saying guys, we got 8 guys here that we really like, but everybody wants a rank, Davis. No, but which one do you like the most in this? And really what we're trying to tell you with tiers is look, we see all of these players as having a similar range of outcomes. And I think that that's just an important thing to really remember, because if you're in a managed league, you should constantly be thinking about range of outcomes, because you can still trade, right? You've got a waiver wire to work. There's so many things that you can be doing with a player that starts hot versus what they may be doing at the end of the year.
100%. I mean, tiers, I think everyone kind of just universally acknowledges it's the right way to do fantasy football rankings. Now, it's a little bit annoying when you're on the clock. I would just say in general, it is frustrating to acknowledge, particularly when you're spending a bunch of money on this stuff. It's well, I really don't know. And that is something that if you've spent a lot of time gambling, a lot of time speculating on things, is just well, you don't know the specific outcome of this guy, but generally speaking, that X percent of time. This type of player or this range of player generally is going to give you this result. Like there are a lot of different ways to view that to view the different problem in the same way. And I mean, this is just true of everything in life. Like you can't control for all the outcomes. And I mean, I would say of fantasy sports, like in general, fantasy football is going to be one of the more variant ones, which is gonna keep me from, like, I don't know, I would say I'd be surprised if I have anyone on more than 30% of my teams this year in fantasy
Yeah.
football. Like that probably sounds about right to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good, like, that's probably, that would be heavy, right? That would be heavy on a player. So I think the other thing that's, interesting about like this, when we talk about like the range of outcomes and stuff, is people every year, sometimes like we try to like go too hard on like what happened last year. Or the other thing you can do is like every example you have for why a player failed, you can almost flip that and you'll find another player that was in the same exact situation that succeeded, right? You can look at Tet McMillan last year and he did a lot of great things on his own, but you could say Bryce Young was a limiting factor. Like Bryce Young had a few big games, but overall was not that great. Justin Jefferson ran into the same thing with JJ McCarthy. But we can also go back in history and we can find teams that threw for like 215 yards per game and their wide receiver one was a top 6 wide receiver. So it's just like people too often want to like just latch on to like one narrative. Like I can't have a wide receiver with a bad quarterback. Like generally speaking, like that's going to get factored into the rankings and tiers. But to act like it's an absolute and it means that a player can't succeed, like if you guys go back and research history, you're just going to find guys that like overcame that, and it's going to surprise you. And then you're going to find the flip side too, guys that play with an amazing quarterback and we actually thought they had a good talent profile and then they still bust. And so like there's all these weird things that happen.
I would say that is probably one of the things that people mistake the most in fantasy football is they apply their heuristic to a situation where it's already been priced in, or they tend to double count this data. I mean, there are a billion examples. I think the Tet McMillan one is good. One that I'm thinking about this upcoming year is like whoever the Jets starting running back ends up being. I mean, it could be Braylon Allen, could be Isaiah Davis, could be Breece Hall again, could be someone they sign in free agency. I mean, it's probably not going to be Breece Hall. Seems like he probably wants to get out of there.
Yeah.
But they're going to say, okay, well, the team's terrible and whatever Jamoke is quarterbacking the Jets, I don't want any part of that. And then my guess is that even if it is Braylon Allen, that he'll be like a 7th round pick or something. And I'll be like, well, I don't know. Actually, if you zoom out on the charts, like he's pretty young, caught a bunch of passes. Like I think I probably like, and this is just a hypothetical example, but the double and triple counting is pretty intense.
Yeah, and I think like the Saints are actually a good example of that. A lot of people just like hard faded the Saints, even though we had Chris Olave, who had a great underlying profile when we look at things like yards per route run, targets per route run, all that kind of stuff. Like historically speaking, like he stacked up with wide receiver 1s and 2s early in his career, even though the production was not necessarily ever great. Then you get Tyler Shuck under center, and like the dude scores 18.8 fantasy points per game in a PPR season to close out from week 9 on. And so like if you hard faded Chris Olave, that really ended up coming back to bite you. But to your point, Davis, like he was around 6 or 7 pick in best ball, and he was later than that in managed leagues. So it was already all baked in. And so like, if you want to take a hard stand on a player like that, maybe in round 2 or 3, like I guess it's fine, but there's really no reason. Like once you start getting to around 6, 7, and 8, like it's really, really baked in.
It's super baked in. I think like you just get, I would say like I just get that doing what I do a lot. The comments are like, dude, I just, I'm not taking players on bad teams or whatever. It's like, I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of guys on bad teams score a lot of fantasy points, generally
Bad teams suddenly get good, like the Colts this year. The volume is not what drove Jonathan Taylor, guys. The whole market
made the playoffs last year, Well, they're a bad team, but
they are. But like with the Colts, for example, like the volume, everyone projected volume for Jonathan Taylor. But what made him a smash as a round 2 pick was not his volume. It's the fact that the Colts suddenly turned into really a very viable offense for about the first 10 to 12 weeks of the season. And what did that do? That meant Jonathan Taylor was scoring touchdowns like crazy. I mean, how many 3-touchdown games did Jonathan Taylor have this year? I think at least 3. I don't know. I don't remember for sure off the top of my head, but those things happen. So another question for you, Davis. So kind of still saying high level draft strategy, guys. We're going to dive into like more of Davis's player takes and some things like that, fades, values. But when you're drafting, are you more of a, and I think when you do as many drafts as you do, that also helps dictate this answer. But are you more of a like, let the draft come to you and let value present itself, and then you'll figure things out as you go? Would you say that's your biggest driver, or are you someone that really is more hardcore? No, I kind of believe in, I should be doing a hero running back more often than not, which, guys, for those of you that don't know, essentially you're drafting one running back in the first 2 rounds or 3 rounds, and then you're waiting to then grab a running back 2, and then you're piling on a bunch of guys later. How do you typically handle that?
So at the beginning of the draft, like, I don't know, first 6 picks, 7 picks or whatever, I'm actually going to be a little bit more sensitive to the value. Like, oh, this guy's a round past ADP. Part of that is in best ball. This doesn't matter as much in manage, but like unique combinations. So in a big best ball tournament, if you're the only one who advanced Puka Nacua, Brock Bowers team, that is super valuable because those are 2 really high ceiling players who are just not paired together on rosters all that often. You are just going to be, you're actually applying like some wisdom of the crowd stuff there. You're like, okay, in this specific room, everyone has decided they don't want to draft, I don't know, Bucky Irving. And I got Bucky Irving in the 4th round. And I just think that's a mistake because I think the wisdom in the ADP was probably better. As it gets deeper into the draft, I would go completely the other way. And I would say, the ADP difference between the 52nd drafted wide receiver on average and the 62nd drafted wide receiver on average is nothing. They project the exact same. They might have different risk profiles. They might be different types of players, but the market has no idea who is going to score more points between these players. The confidence intervals are very low. So I'm much more likely to take a 18th round pick in the 12th round because I'm just like, well, I just think this is a good value and I just want to have more of this player.
Matches
I really
the
like
kind of
this
team
player.
you're building. Yes.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I'm with you. And to your point on the draft capital stuff, like in fantasy, it's actually very similar, guys, to what we see in the NFL. Cause like I'm deep in the weeds right now working on the rookie supermodel. I'm looking at running backs this week. And like historically speaking, so if you think about it this way, like not to get too nerdy, but it's a logarithmic curve, right? So that's a curve that, steeply goes down and then levels off. And what Davis is talking about, the same thing happens in fantasy. I've done the same research. So essentially like your early round picks are so much more valuable than your late round picks. But what happens is you reach this point like around 6 or 7, where it really starts to flatten off, right? Now it still continues to go down to what Davis's point is, like the range of outcomes on a player going in round 12 versus 17 is actually a lot closer than what people think. The range of outcomes on someone going in round 1 in a fantasy draft versus someone in round 6, even though we get round 6 hits that turn into round 1 picks the next year, there is a big drop off from what you're seeing in those early rounds versus like what you're getting in round 6. So as the draft goes on, to Davis's point, like the difference, like in the actual value and range of outcomes of those picks really changes. So you can lean a lot more into like, your takes. You can also just lean more into like the structure of your team. So sounds like you more are value early on, right? And then you're kind of shifting based on the way that you've built. But let me ask you this, like, is there a point, could you have built a team a certain way where you may see a value and you're like, I'm still going to pass it because structurally, I think it just screws my whole team. Let's take the example you had. Let's say you started with 3 running backs and now Bucky Irving is available in the 4th round. Are you still just like, screw it, I'm still taking him, like, because he shouldn't be there in the 4th round?
Yeah, the combo is more important than whatever the wide receiver points would be there. Of like, there's just are not that many teams with Josh Jacobs and Bucky Irving and also Jahmyr Gibbs on them. And so then maybe I decide like, oh, I'll stop at 4 running backs. And just like, if this isn't the combination of guys you need, then whatever, this team wasn't going to win anyway. But like getting a round of ADP value is so rare. Our friend Leone has done a lot of studies on this, and basically like the single greatest predictor of whether a fantasy football team is going to do well or not is like how much real time ADP value they got. Cause like, dude, if you think about it, people are pretty good at fantasy football now. They all, they're listening to Talk Data to me. They subscribe to Fantasy Life. Like they're not idiots.
They're listening to Davis Mattek.
Yeah, like they know what's going on out there. And so because all these people know all this, like, dude, I mean, you're getting every injury update. We got, we have a $200,000 to first fantasy football tournament open in January. Like, people are serious about fantasy football. So in that given draft room, you were just like, your room is disregarding so much information to give you that combo. I just think it does make sense to get after those combos as much as
Will
possible.
you even do it at quarterback? Let's say you took Josh Allen in round 2 and now Jalen Hurts is there 2 rounds past his value.
It's really unlikely to do it at quarterback, like,
Yeah, I agree.
because you're just gaining so little, because I mean, of all the positions, like, the bands of quarterback scoring are the most narrow, and you're honestly going to gain more points probably by adding 2 cheap later guys than getting 1 really good. Like, if you did, I don't know, let's say you got Josh Allen and you got even a 20 pick discount on Joe Burrow. What adds more points to your roster? Like, getting that Joe Burrow discount or getting Fernando Mendoza and Malik Willis in 14-15? Like, probably the 2 young guys.
Right. Of course, that means next year it will be a Josh Allen, Joe Burrow team, guys, that wins best ball mania, because Joe Burrow goes off in just the right week. And when Josh Allen does, it advances those teams. And then Josh Allen does it in the final round. No, really, really good stuff. So what's been your favorite way so far? Let's start diving in more to your takes off these 15 drafts, narrowing in some. What's been your favorite way to start these drafts? When you get done and you look back at it and the way that it went, you're like, man, that felt really good. Like, I really liked drafting my team that way.
I really like getting one of the stud running backs in round 1, Bowers in round 2, and then just kind of best pick available round 3, and Luther Burden in round 4. Burden is like the guy in my rankings right now that, like, percentage of draft wise I'm highest on and consensus. The issue you run into with taking a tight end early is running back kind of just takes this huge cliff fall round 6, round 7, round 8. Kind of, you get to like the Ramondre Stevenson range, and then it's guys with like huge question marks, right? So you've got like Monungai and Corum and Pollard and Byshell Tootin. These guys were like, okay, things could work out for you and you could be an awesome pick, or like you might not score 8 fantasy points per game. And if you're getting your running back 2 in that range, you are going to be having a little bit of trouble.
So what's the flip side to your favorite really been the drafts where you just didn't take running backs early? Is that what made you feel the most comfortable when you were done with those?
No, I think I've been kowtowed enough. I think I've been roped enough by just how much better running backs have been in fantasy. Like, the true 0 RB starts are more difficult for me now. Like, it's a little bit harder for me to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm just not going to take a running back until Trevion Henderson or whatever. It's a little bit more difficult for me to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and just looking at like the ADPs, I put out a My Guys article this week. You guys can check it out over on fantasylife.com for free. And essentially, it's way too early for My Guys. I haven't done all my research, but essentially I just took the ADP from the big boards and started looking at players that I was like, man, like, this really stands out to me as potentially being a value. And one of the things that I did notice was how quickly the running backs fell off, and how early some of the guys that you talked about that still have major question marks going in the next year, like Trevion, for example, I believe is still a round 4 pick right now. So yeah, that if Trevion's going in round 4, as much as, we may love the potential upside if everything broke his way, like, that tells you guys like what's going on at the running back position. So what position are you the most comfortable waiting on?
Probably tight end. I mean, it's just kind of always the answer. There are just so many guys out there who I think are good fantasy scorers, and the opportunity cost gets lower and lower. Like, the range of Aronde Gadsden, Kenyon Sadiq, then Hunter Henry, Juwan Johnson. I mean, Mark Andrews is free. Isaiah Likely is going to be a free agent, going to get paid a good bit. He's quite cheap. I don't think Travis Kelce is going to retire. I think all the indications seem to be he's going to come back another year for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's really inexpensive. And Njoku, honestly, to me, if I was an NFL GM and I saw this meta of 2 tight ends and needing blockers and stuff, like he's an unrestricted free agent, he would probably be my first call for a lot of these teams. Like the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins should already be in contact with David Njoku's people. Gunnar Helm, a big second-year breakout guy for me for the Tennessee Titans. Eli Stowers, this rookie from Vanderbilt. I was really impressed with his prospect profile. Like I think tight end, I mean, Terrence Ferguson. Terrence Ferguson had an 18.5-yard ADOT for the Los Angeles Rams. He's vanilla Kyle Pitts out here. I think his ceiling is super high this upcoming
So some of the
year.
guys that Ferguson, I mean, that Davis Mattek just named: Terrence Ferguson, tight end 23, Travis Kelce, tight end 24, Colby Parkinson, tight end 25. These guys are going like picks 183 to 185 guys. For those of you on YouTube looking, I've got the Underdog ADP up right now for tight ends. It's really interesting, that you mentioned this, because I'll say, like, one thing that I've been thinking a little bit about, like, bully tight end could potentially work this year. Like if your tight end 2 is Colston Loveland, like let's say you did Trey McBride's tough, right? Because Trey McBride, you have to basically take at the beginning of round 2 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bowers makes a lot of sense to me, because essentially he is Trey McBride as well, but you get him at the end of round 2, more closer to the round 2-3 turn. But round 4 is Colston Loveland. And like, man, after he took over the lead role for the Bears, and it wasn't just due to an injury to Komet, and Komet is someone they can get off the books easily. I wouldn't necessarily mind seeing them even bring him back, just with the way these offenses are playing. But man, Colson Loveland, like to close out the year, like really was putting up more wide receiver points than tight ends. Now it's not a huge sample, but it is a prospect that, like, the rookie supermodel loved him, is the 3rd best prospect back to 2017 in the model. What are your thoughts on Loveland?
Oh, I'm huge on Loveland. I mean, I think he is probably one of the better tight end values on the board, even at this like
He's the
huge
best in my
price.
opinion.
Yeah.
Pick 41 guys. Bowers is 20. Trey McBride is 14. And I think Loveland could easily be in their tier this year.
100%. Completely agree.
29% target share over his 4 starts, the best yards per route run outside of Brock Bowers and Kyle Pitts in their rookie seasons, going all the way back to the year 2000. So, I mean, like, just did some really crazy things, and he was a prospect that we already love. The other thing I really love about Loveland, not to spend too much time like on a player take here, but he has this unique combination, whereas we get a lot of tight ends guys that get a lot of targets, but it's all this low ADOT stuff. And it's still fine. Like Trey McBride mostly lives that way. Jacoby Brissett did unlock some deeper stuff for him once he took over as a starter this year. But if you look back historically at the tight ends that have broken fantasy football, Rob Gronkowski, the year that Mark Andrews did it, go back to Jimmy Graham when he was doing it. It was these players that could actually earn a high target share, Davis, but they could also do it down the field, and they were these massive red zone threats. And really, like, Loveland checks all those boxes. He can earn the targets. He can work vertical down the field, which is the area that the defenses are giving up right now in this version of NFL defenses. And I mean, he just has one of these rare. The combination of his traits is so rare. Like he could put up 16 to 18 fantasy points per game over a season. Like, it would still be a really great season, guys, for him to do that. That would be like his outlier upside end of the band. But I think he's actually one of the few guys that actually has that ceiling because of the unique traits that he has.
100%. And I'm a big Caleb Williams believer. I'm a big Ben Johnson believer. And, I mean, I suppose the 2025 Bears are a bit of an eye of the beholder situation. If you want to say they ran really hot, Caleb made a bunch of bad throws and got lucky on the 4th down throw to Dunze, got lucky on the 4th down throw to Komet, got lucky in all the 4th quarter comebacks. You certainly can. That it's fine to take that view. And I certainly will take that uncharitable view of teams I don't like the Broncos, right? I'll be like, well, the Broncos totally sun run, and they had a 30-point comeback in the 4th quarter against the Giants. And I don't know, they're not really that good. So I get it if you just are one of those people on Caleb Williams. I'm just not one of them. I think Caleb Williams, I mean, I'll just say this, the year-to-year improvement he made with the sack rate, he went from basically the most sacked quarterback of all time to I believe he was 3rd in the NFL in sack rate. And I think he was 1st in pressure to sack.
Yeah.
So to me, that just shows that he can learn, shows that he can, and that he's coachable and that he can adapt. And I also think Ben Johnson is an
Yeah,
insanely smart
keeps him on
guy.
schedule. Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't think he would have taken that job if he didn't think Caleb was the guy. Like, I think he
yeah.
just would have been like, "I'll just stay in Detroit for another year or take a
And
different
Caleb,
job."
guys, the thing is, he still can take another step forward in his game, which would be just really honestly like honing in the accuracy on some of these wide open throws that you guys have seen. We've all seen them, right? He makes the ridiculous, crazy throw all the time. You know, did it twice in the playoffs and like two of the biggest, obviously the two biggest moments of his career to this point, and totally came through with these throws down the field on the run. You know, one was to Romo Dunze, had another one to DJ Moore. But like if you look at Caleb like getting on schedule this year, and part of that was the Ben Johnson offense, like the accuracy can improve, you know, and so it's not like he was this guy that was known as being highly inaccurate coming out of college. So like if he improves that area on top of what he already did with the sack stuff that you're talking about, Davis, which was a problem for him in college, guys, and then it was a problem in year one. You had the big piece come out from Tyler Dune that basically Caleb like wasn't, you know, doing anything, wasn't doing his homework, wasn't, you know, studying, getting ready or whatever. And so to see the big turnaround that we had under Ben Johnson, I think to your point is great. And that bodes well for really all the weapons, like for, you know, whenever you look at the Bears. So we talked about a fun second year player, will be a second year player with Colson Loveland. But what about the free agents and rookies? Like, how are you handling those in your early drafts? I mean, are you trying to take more of a bullish stand, or you're just being more diversified? Because like, we don't really know like where some of these players are going to land. It could be great. It could be bad. Obviously they'll have a ripple effect on the teams that they land on to other potential starters as well. So any specific guys that you're handling a certain way?
So some of the free agents I'm a little bit more bearish on, just in general. Like NFL free agency has really become a spot where if you're good and the league thinks you're good, you don't even get to free agency. Like Romeo Dubs might get paid a ton of money, but in a way
Yeah.
that's kind of bearish. If
I don't
the
like the receivers, but there are running backs this year that if they
So
landed in the right spot,
the
like,
running backs are good. We've got like headlining. We have Kenneth Walker and Brees Hall, and I think Kenneth Walker
an
probably is just going to
ETN.
re-sign. ETN, I think ETN. If you made me handicap it, I'd say he's like -110 to go back to the Jags. But Rico Dowdle is going to be on a new team. I think he is going to get paid a surprising amount of money. Think that a lot of teams are going to be really into what he did last year after doing it for the Cowboys and then getting paid very little and clearly outperforming Chuba Hubbard. Another very sneaky one is
Yeah,
Rachaad
Dowdle's
White.
running back 33, just for you guys wondering. That's pick 101 right now. Sorry, keep going, Davis.
Rachaad White's like running back 55, I think. I think he is like classic. Some GM and some coach are going to be like, dude weighs 220 pounds. I can play him on third downs. Like coaches love Rachaad White way more than teams do. No, I think Rachaad White really wants to play for the Commanders and they have a spot for him because Eckler probably is going to retire, probably not going to be able to play anymore. So maybe that one is like he just already he played with Brandon Ayuk in college at Arizona State is why. And then
I
I
love
think
that one just because of the receiving profile, guys. And like
yeah,
efficiency is not sticky, year over year. Efficiency is actually not as big as you think it is for scoring fantasy points. So a lot of things like that running back research tells us, like, even though Rachaad White, you know, gets ousted here by Bucky Irving, who just ended up being a really good player, like he scored really well in the rookie supermodel. Like the pre-draft rookie supermodel is actually more predictive of future fantasy success than draft capital value alone. And it gets even better when you put draft capital value in it. But man, Rachaad White, and my model goes back to 2017. Like he's a top 15 back. And it's because of how good he can be as a receiver. And we know that the guys that can catch passes and stay on the field for third downs like that, Davis, and that have his size so they can also get the carries inside the 5. Like those are the two biggest things for running backs. If you're playing in half PPR, full PPR, is you can stay on the field and you're catching the passes and you have a high target share, as well as can you then stay on the field and score the rushing touchdowns inside the 5. And like, as much as he's not an explosive player, he still checks both of those boxes.
I mean, I don't think Rachaad White's very good, but
I don't either.
I'm completely with you. I think some team is going to give him the ball 180 times this upcoming year, and he tends to get high value touches too because he plays on third downs and he's a big
Yep.
dude, so he plays in the red zone. I think James Conner probably gets cut by the Cardinals and could be a super strong. I mean, he could go to the Vikings. He could go. I mean, there are a lot of places that James Conner could go and get 230 touches.
Yeah. James Conner is another interesting one. And again, like people are not going to be as worried about the age after what Derrick Henry has done. And guys, remember, like these running backs are running into lighter boxes. So it can actually help elongate their career. It can actually help elongate their ability to continue to be successful in the league. As well, as much as Derrick Henry's a freak, as defenses have adapted to stop the passing game, guess who they're not set up to stop? A running back like Derrick Henry. So that's a really good call out on that. All right. So you talked about some of the free agents. What about rookies? Are there any rookies that you're particularly in on? Or if you just have any general comments around the way the market might be treating certain rookies and whether you agree or not?
Casey Concepcion, I think I'm probably gonna end up being higher
Wide
on.
receiver.
He's just a classic Davis Mattek guy. He's small, he's fast. He was awesome as a true freshman at NC State. Much worse as a sophomore. And I mean, this is really granular, but NC State's quarterback Grayson McCall in 2024 suffered like a horrible traumatic head injury, so the team played a freshman I want to say his name's Amani Bailey. That might not be exactly right, but like a running quarterback who couldn't throw at all. And I'll get really granular here with you guys on Casey Concepcion. So think about this when he gets drafted. His market share numbers his last year at Texas A&M look good, but not like all time. Mario Craver, the first 3 games of Texas A&M season, had 180 yards, 190 yards, and 210 yards, all with a touchdown in those first 3 games. Didn't top, I think, 60 yards in a game for the rest of their next 10 games, while Concepcion's production was good in all of those games. It shifts the market share numbers in a very weird way. And if you chop any of those out, he becomes like a 35, 38% dominator rating guy. And he probably is going to end up being the next like Matthew Golden, Xavier Worthy style bust. But I really like how he plays.
Well, we own L's here, Davis. So actually, I think like at Fantasy Life, like we spend more time owning L's than trying to tout our W's, and not necessarily because we have more of the L's. Like I would say they're pretty evenly split, but I appreciate you calling out an L on a certain archetype. Anyone else, like any thoughts on? I know a bigger name, Jeremiah Love. He's going right now as the running back 10. He's a big time prospect. Any thoughts on any of the runners?
I think Love, like, to me, he's a little bit worse than like the Genty, Bijan, Zeke, McCaffrey, like ultra mega tier of running backs. He won't be treated that way because he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. But I just think he's a smidge worse than those guys. I'm most interested to get athletic testing on Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, the Penn State running backs who impacted each other's profiles because they played together for their whole careers at Penn State. My stuff really likes Singleton if I give him good draft capital and good RAS in the janky little model that I built, which is mostly based it off like receiving production for running backs because it's such a clear signal for them. Like if Singleton's like a 3rd round pick and has like a 7.5 RAS, to me he's gonna look in my stuff like a stud.
Yeah, I'll show you guys something real nerdy. I wasn't even planning on sharing this, but I just told you I'm doing rookie supermodel work. So what you're looking at on the screen here, guys, is a list to the left of like all the factors I've tested, historically, and there's 152 of them. Like I do really sick, weird stuff, and my wife gets mad at me because she's like, enough is enough already. But what I did with this data that you guys are looking at, so the first column is the correlation of said, factor to the left against fantasy points per game over a player's first 3 careers, right? First 3 years of their career. So it's just versus their average over their first 3 years. But column D then takes that and compares it to only guys that it reached at least 9.5 fantasy points per game over their first 3 seasons. That's actually what the running back 36 is average. But if you think about it, guys, like a lot of times, like say Trevion Henderson, some of these guys that don't do well in year 1, then they start to grow in year 2 or year 3. So I chose the 9.5, not just because it's the bottom of the running back 3 territory. We really care about players that are better than that, but it gives some breathing room. Like if they had a bad year 1, then in year 2 or 3, if they bring it up over this, they would make it. And the bottom line is, like, I'm not going to talk about all these data points here, but if you look to the right, I've got a category bucket, and you will see all of them are receiving, which is what Davis is talking about, right? Whether it's yards per route run, receiving yards per team pass attempt. Even if you look at adjusted yards per team attempt, guys, what that is receiving yards times 2 plus rushing yards divided by all the team plays in the games where they played. Now, I do a lot of interesting stuff, adjusting for strength of schedule, teammates, all that. So you see some of that on the left. But the big thing, the main reason I put that on the screen was just because what Davis had just said. And really, if you're looking for one clear, very easy cheat code, and like you don't want to read a model, you don't want to look at my stuff or whatever, which, you know, I hope you do, but it's fine. You're just looking for guys, you're looking for their draft capital, and you're looking for how good they were as receivers. And if you do those two things, you're going to be able to hit on a lot of really good running backs in fantasy football. They won't all work out, but that's the kind of archetype you want for ceiling. And I don't have the grid up still, but I have to scroll quite a ways, guys, before I get to anything to do with rushing. So rushing in the rookie supermodel, like if you factor all the things I'm doing, it's like, it's not even 15% of a running back's grade. Like most of it is all geared to the receiving stuff. So
my stuff is draft capital, RAS, and age adjusted receiving yards per team pass attempt. That's it. That's all I got.
Yep. Yeah, I do year weighting stuff as well. I do a lot of different blend stuff, but like it's based off like we have a deal with PFF where we can get all the data. So you don't necessarily have to have all of that to have a good model. I do have it, so I can do some of the extra adjustments for it. So, but yeah, I'm pretty excited about it though, guys. So I'm going to make some tweaks to the model based on really trying to gear it more towards the hitting like the big time names versus just like against. It'll still be geared to points per game overall. But what's cool, man, is the pre-draft model is actually more predictive than draft capital alone. And the one other cheat code I'll give you guys is you should not be using draft pick. Draft pick is like this linear thing. We talked about it earlier for fantasy drafts. Draft capital value is what you should be looking at. So Chase Stewart did some really good work based off of the old Jimmy Johnson trade chart. He basically modernized it for today's game, and it gives you what the value is for every NFL draft pick. And again, it's this logarithmic thing where you have this massive drop off from the early picks, and then you get this flattening. So what that does in the model is it shows you like being a 5th round pick versus a 6th round pick doesn't really matter. Really, it comes back to like the other factors. But if you get that early draft capital investment, it makes sense, right? Teams are going to give you every chance they can to succeed because it's in their best interest. And obviously, NFL teams know what they're doing for the most part, Davis. Like they're scouting these players. They know things that we don't know. So it's also helping, account for that in the model. But all right, let's jump into some of your most drafted players. For this, I'm going to pull up. I'm actually just going to pull up the Underdog draft queue. We'll start with quarterbacks, Davis. So who are some of the guys, let's talk about, that you think are values? And obviously that would be meaning you're clicking on them more, most likely. And then like, who are some of the players that you've been fading at quarterback early on?
Yeah. So number one, the most drafted guy for me is Mendoza. He's just too cheap for a guy who's going to be number one overall, and he's going to be throwing
QB 21 guys.
Yeah, going to be throwing to Brock Bowers, going to be throwing some screen passes to Ashton Genty. I would assume they are going to massively overpay some wide receiver in free agency, someone who sucks but is better than Alex Bachman-Turner Overdrive.
It's going to be Tucker. Romeo Dobbs.
It's going to be Romeo. Yeah, it's going to be Romeo Dobbs, someone like that.
They need a field stretcher. I would love the Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce, I think, is overrated right now, but like he did good at what he did last year, and he can stretch the field out. Then that opens things up underneath for like a Brock Bowers. But like, I really don't want to see another possession person. Can we get someone that can make the defenses like have to respect the deep ball? I think that would be nice.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree.
And also, you won't be on Kurt Warner's shit list. Kurt Warner out here calling people out for downing Fernando Mendoza. Not such a thing here. Davis is in on Fernando Mendoza, but pick 145 right now on Underdog. Okay, next one.
I just want Mahomes is my second, and I assume that will stop being the case when everyone realizes he's going to play in week 1. But as of right now, it's just up in the air. He's quarterback 11, 93rd overall. My guess is when everyone realizes that he is playing week 1, he'll probably get up to the quarterback 6, and then I will just end up having a normal amount of him.
And even if like he didn't make it to 6, like if he climbs even 3 or 4 spots, like you're still getting the value on it. So yeah, I like those two. Anyone you're fading at quarterback where you're just like, man, like you may even like them, but you're just like the market's like lost his mind.
Yeah, it's Herbert, right? I mean, Herbert's a totally fine quarterback, but 68th overall, ahead of Burrow, ahead of Daniels, I mean, look, God love Justin Herbert. Ahead of Jalen Hurts is just like, there's just no way to justify it. It's just,
I agree.
yeah, it's
I agree.
just
And I like
insane.
Herbert. I like Mike McDaniel, but we don't know how much Mike McDaniel and his scheme, like, he came up with a lot of the, and really embrace like motion at the snap guys, which has been a cheat code for wide receivers, embraces play action, which is a cheat code for wide receivers and tight ends on a per route basis. But man, as soon as he lost Tyreek Hill, everything went away.
Yes. 100%.
Like, so, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think Mike McDaniel is a good coordinator. Do I feel the same way I felt about him 2 years ago? No, I don't. I think there's a question. I think he'll actually be a good fit with Harbaugh because he does like to use the heavy personnel stuff. He is willing to stay more balanced between the run and the pass. So I see a good marriage, but I'm with you. Like Justin Herbert, I think this is a bit of an overreaction to Mike McDaniel. I'm fine with Herbert as a top 12 fantasy quarterback, but I can't, man, there's no way I can take him over Joe Burrow either.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
no chance.
Yeah. So, all right. I love that one. All right. Let's go running back.
Running back, my most drafted running back right now. Well, these are actually boring. It's a rookie. It's Adam Randall from Clemson, who I think is maybe
It'll be 237. So you're saying you're getting him now before anyone knows about him.
Well, and what is going to happen is because he is a very elusive archetype of player, and fantasy nerds love this archetype of player. He is a college wide receiver who his final season converted to running back. Yeah, Brashard Smith. The fantasy players, we love this style of guy, of an expensive guy. I like ETN a good bit more than the market. I like Rico Dowdle a good bit more than the market, and Katron Allen as well. Another guy.
So ETN guys going running back 18. That's pick 37. And then we already talked about Rico Dowdle, pick 101. And then was it Katron Allen, your final one?
Yes. Yeah.
Where is he going?
He's the running back 40, I think.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't go far enough. Yeah. So he's pick 133, guys. So mixing in some rookies there as well as some free agents, which we talked about a little bit earlier. Anybody at running back, market's lost their mind. You're kind of at a hard fade position.
Right now it's kind of hard for me to just like truly shut anyone down. Like it's like I don't like the prices on Barkley. I don't love the prices on like Josh Jacobs. I think in a perfect world these guys should be a little bit cheaper. But I just am not I've just been beat.
Mixing them in still.
Yeah, I just have been beat by so many of these guys in the past.
Last year was Jonathan Taylor. The year before it was Saquon Barkley. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is like the league is leaning so much in like design rushing attempts were like were I don't know the highest in like the last 5 or 6 years, I believe. Not back to like the heyday of running the ball, but teams are obviously running the ball more. The Eagles theoretically still have a good offensive line, even though they struggled at times this year. You get rid of maybe the worst coordinator possibly ever in the history of the NFL. And the reason I say that is you have a loaded team and you turn it into that heap of trash. Like, I'm sorry, like Kevin Patullo, like just GTFH. I left off the O there. Yeah. Anyone else? And it doesn't have to be a hard fade. Maybe someone you just like struggle to click on.
David Montgomery still is a little bit expensive to me. Here's a hard one. Quinshon Judkins. I'd love to know that he was healthy, but I don't have any assurances of that. And also, I'd love to know who the quarterback is going to be for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, as of right now, I'm a little scared that it might be Deshaun Watson, which. Not loving
it's
that.
Not been good. We get Todd Monken there. They have some pieces on the offensive line, but it's not the offensive line from 3 or 4 years ago that they had. Quinshon did play really well, but to your point, you still have the massive quarterback plus injury concerns. And here's the other thing, like even if Quinshon gets a complete healthy bill of health, I mean, how much is he really going to climb from here? Like if I'm just trying to make a bet on early drafts as someone that could slide as we get more information, like he might be one of them. So I see where you're going with that. What about Jaylen Warren with Kenneth Gainwell potentially? Kenneth Gainwell, obviously, is a free agent, so he could be gone. You get Mike McCarthy, not that we love him, but he's not an Arthur Smith, got to tinker around and rotate 7 guys kind of dude. You got Caleb Johnson there from last year, but Jalen Warren, man, like really good receiver. I know we've done this. I feel like every year, guys, he's RB26. He's picked 76.
Well, Jalen Warren, he kind of got there. But then Kenneth Gainwell ended up taking all of it,
Kenneth Gainwell, another rookie supermodel favorite, and it finally happened. Sometimes we're just early, Davis. Okay, let's talk wide receiver.
All right.
Your favorites.
It's gonna surprise absolutely no one.
Don't say that, Davis. We're trying to get people to stay tuned in, for the whole show. You guys are gonna love this call right now by Davis.
My 3 most drafted wide receivers are Luther Burden, Zachariah Branch, and Xavier Worthy. So
Luther Burden is pick 48, guys, wide receiver 22. Obviously came on in a big way, and like all the underlying, as Davis likes to say, fantasy nerds, people still living in their mom's basement love Luther Burden, unlike the regular public. But pick 48, and then who is your next one?
My next one was...
You said Worthy. I'll go to him real quick.
Yeah.
Worthy's pick 103. That's not... Yeah, man. That's wide receiver 48. First round pick. We're in year 3. Had to battle through injuries. Still gets to play with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I know you're just doing this because of Eric Bieniemy.
It's more like I'm giving him a pass for the torn labrum. Although I do think the Bieniemy hire is pretty good for everyone involved there. I'm giving him.
Let's be honest, it's just Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like they can have any coordinator they want.
I don't think so. I think there is a addition by subtraction, because it appears that Nagy was not the guy. Right. It appears that like the worst EPA of the Chiefs Mahomes era was with Nagy. So I think there's something there. It's really fair. A lot about the
a lot of it can come back
here.
to just it can also a lot of it comes back to like everyone's all the EPAs are down per play because of defenses. But I'm not going to argue. I'm not a Matt Nagy truther. So you had one other name. Who was it?
Zachariah Branch, who is a USC to Georgia transfer. Again, just blindingly fast. Does your supermodel for wide receivers include any return stuff?
I look at it, but I don't include it in the model. But I will say, anecdotally, the return stuff has had signal on some players.
Yes, it has. And his true freshman year at USC was like a all-time efficiency punt and kick returner. So I'm sort of hip to that.
Yeah, there's he definitely has a hive out there. I see his name pop up quite a bit. But he's wide receiver 78, guys. Pick 192. Okay, any fades here at wide receiver, or just more, oh my God, I really don't like it when I click on this guy?
Some of the guys I find it hard to take at their price. I'm trying to see. Garrett Wilson. It's just like, who is going to be quarterback for the Jets? Not that I don't take him. I'm just having a hard time. Drake London,
wide receiver 18.
Drake London, 1-2 turn. I just feel like the wide receivers there, or the tight ends there, are a little bit better values than him. I think I like Neighbors more. I think honestly, I'm just now waiving the quarterback concerns for Justin Jefferson. I'm just like, man, either they figure something out at quarterback, or the whole organization has to go into the tank. Cause what come on, man. What are we doing? We're going to let Justin Jefferson die on the vine again. I don't think so.
Well, I mean, either McCarthy has to get better, or they have to have another guy that can replace him, because that's obviously the big factor. We don't think it's anything to do with play calling with O'Connell. We've seen him just, honestly thrive with every other quarterback not named JJ McCarthy. Is the funny part of that. And I mean, it's been Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins. I mean, you can name it. Kevin O'Connell's had success with them, but not JJ McCarthy. Sorry, Thor. So Drake London, you're taking Malik Neighbors and Justin Jefferson over him. Any other receivers that you want to mention here?
trying to see anyone else who's like, oh, Lad
You
McConkey.
did Garrett Wilson, which is wide receiver 18 guys. He's going pick 39. So Garrett Wilson, a very good player at football, but yes, possibly one of the worst environments. Although he was overcoming it amazingly. He was potentially going to be one of those examples of a guy on a terrible team that actually finally came through, even though he had played on better teams in the past and not come through, and that would have been Garrett Wilson. It was a small sample, but before he got hurt, he was balling. Who was the other one?
Lad McConkey. I just I'm having a hard time. He was so bad last season, and I mean, I just think that he's probably still going to have target competition. Like even if QJ or Keenan goes to 0, then you've got Trey Harris, you've got Gadsden, you've got Hampton as like a really strong pass catcher. So I'm having a tough time. And maybe it is just the offensive line went to crap last year, and it's all going to be better this year. But
I will say with Lad McConkey, he's not the traditional small wide receiver that most of you are thinking of, which is just, and he is quick and everything. But most people think of Wes Welker, they think of Danny Amendola, they think of these guys that are like operating underneath. The thing with Lad is he really does operate further downfield, but and he gets open. He's open all the time, guys, but his routes take time to develop. It's like this very nuanced thing, the way he's setting someone up. And then a lot of times late in the play, whenever Herbert's getting pushed out of the pocket or off of his spot, you will see Lad actually breaking into the wide open, but Herbert can't get to him on a read. So I will say the bigger concern is what you mentioned first. I think Lad is a really good player, but they have multiple wide receivers here. If you guys look at Mike McDaniel over the history of his time, even when he had Tyreek Hill as well as Jalen Waddle, neither one of those guys had 90, 95% route participation rates. He rotates his wide receivers a lot, and that was with names that are a lot less than what they're going to have here with Quentin Johnston, with Trey Harris. You've also got a Rondé Gadsden you're trying to figure out how to get on the field, which a lot of times might not be in a traditional tight end role. So I agree with you. I think the potential squeeze here is it remains a balanced offense, and you're having to try to live off of efficiency. I do happen to think that Lad McConkey is still a very good player, but also it could come down to they see him as being one of their 2 starting wide receivers on the outside on a team that might not run a ton of 3 wide receivers. Like we'll have to kind of see how that goes. So I can feel you on that one. I think Lad's a good player, but there are definitely some circumstances there. Okay, let's talk tight end. Got one more category here.
I mean,
who is Davis Mattek in love with?
I mean,
Heart
the
emojis.
Cheap guys are Helm and Terrence Ferguson and Kelsey. Kelsey is not going to stay cheap for long. And then honestly, like I actually think there's a pretty good argument to be made. Bowers and McBride are actually underpriced. I mean, they are going to be. I mean, if Brissett or some Brissett analog starts at quarterback for the Cardinals next year, like the ceiling on McBride is insane. If Mendoza can Mendoza be 18th in the NFL in EPA per play? If so, Bowers could score like 300 PPR points pretty easily. Like these guys are so good and can separate so much from even wide receiver scores, I think.
I think your challenge with Colson Loveland, and although you love him, is that he goes in the same range as Luther Burden.
Honestly, yes. And weirdly, because wide receiver scoring is so bad and so down, it's so hard to find good fantasy wide receivers now that Burden having Burden having a 240 point season and Loveland having a 240 point season, you might rather have Burden.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lean probably Loveland. I just think he's the better prospect, but I love Luther Burden too. So I'm gonna be in the same boat as you. Like once I start drafting these teams, I'll probably just find a way to split them up. I think Colson Loveland's got the safer path to playing time. There could still be this weird thing with Burden. We'll see. I lean into talent profiles, guys, at wide receiver, so you won't hear me telling you not to take Luther Burden. I would rather just bet on the talent and kind of let like the coaching stuff like work itself out. Okay. So anybody at tight end that you're fading? I love the Bowers call, by the way. I think Bowers at the end of round 2, he's the same thing as Trey McBride. You're just getting him at a lower price.
I still don't love Pitts, mostly because I'm just not much of a Penix guy. Kincaid is tough. It's just like, I don't know, man. This guy, like, he cannot
Well,
stay
now,
healthy.
yeah, dude, you get Joe Brady back. What the hell?
I'll never understand. I don't get it. I don't get it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, like one thing Joe Brady might have been in charge of would be playing time for players. Like, I mean,
Right.
and he never gave Kincaid a full-time role, despite the fact that you had no wide receivers. No one. Yeah, Khalil Shakir, who's an underneath like slot wide receiver, and that's it. And you still are keeping Kincaid at a 50% route participation, despite leading all tight ends guys with at least 200 routes and targets per route run and yards per route run.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't understand it.
I hated them rehiring him.
And
hated it.
Where are you at on Kittle? Because like I have a hard time. 31-year-old dude coming back from the Achilles. Zeros are just really hard to overcome in best ball, and he's not even a cheap zero. You know, you got to
tight
take
end 13.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could argue relative to what Kittle has been, that is cheap. Pick 129. Like, I'm gonna mix some Kittle in, undoubtedly, but like the problem with Kittle is like even if you get him back and to your point, it's the age, it's the Achilles, like he just deals with so many injuries anyway. Like he's gonna get another injury next year on top of trying to come back from this one. So I'm with you. Like I love George Kittle. Like I think George Kittle's definitely one of the best tight ends that we've seen in the last 20 years in the NFL. Like obviously I've got Gronk above that. Jimmy Graham's up there. Travis Kelce, is up there. George Kittle's like somewhere right. He's in that group. Like he's in that group of players, but at his age and everything, I'm not totally scared off by this price, but in best ball, like, that's going to be tough. Like we don't know how many zeros you're going to get from that.
No, you have no idea how many zeros you're going to get from that. And I mean, they got the substation, dude. What's his recovery going to be like with the
they're going to have to move the practice facility this offseason.
Yeah.
Where are you at on Fannin? Or I mean, I know you obviously probably like Fannin as a prospect and then what he did in year one, but like how high are you willing to go on him just with it's still the Browns?
I like him. Yeah,
Me too.
He's the one player there where I'm pretty happy to buy on the Browns at a
We're
more
on the same page.
Price.
I like Fannin over Pitts.
Yes,
personally. Okay. Any fades here at tight end? I mean, you already kind of said Kittle is a guy that scares you.
I tell you what, Sadiq,
where are you at on Tucker Kraft with his recovery and everything?
He also seems a little expensive to me, and also just like
he's pick 84, tight end 7, guys. So
the way that the Packers do their targets, they are just so egalitarian about it. They just sort of. They just give everyone 4 targets a game. It's a little bit hard to buy the top there. Sadiq, the Oregon tight end, is just interesting. 1.67 yards per route run. He's like probably going to be drafted very high, but he doesn't necessarily have the analytical profile where you're like, yeah, that guy is going to be the guy, you really wanted to have.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. So, well, hey, man, great stuff. Thanks for jumping on, sharing your knowledge of how you're feeling with 15 drafts under your belt. And I think it's great for people just to get to see like where these players are going. And I'm sure some of the names that they heard, they're probably like, what? They're going where? I know that's how I used to feel when I would first like dive back into the draft streets. Well, now like it's all year long. Like, so you don't really have necessarily a break from it, but the average person still does. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your thoughts. So tell people, Davis, where they can find your work, what they need to go check out.
Yeah, you can get all of my written stuff over on patreon.com/Davis Mattek, spreadsheets, rankings, all that good stuff. And then streaming best ball drafts, high stakes drafts, all that stuff, pretty much every day of the week over at youtube.com/@Davis_Mattek.
Awesome, man. You guys go check out Davis's stuff. Go subscribe. Really, really great content. And possibly no one that's more online than you, Davis. Like I always see you out there. Now, my co-host Ian Harditz is like the most online X person ever. But like you are constantly churning out the drafts. Great YouTube channel. So guys, go make sure you check out all of that. And we will be back next week with another episode of Talk Data to Me. Until then, I will see you guys later.